Hi, this is Phil Caveney, and I'm here with another video production, and I'm really charged about the events this weekend, and I hope that my enthusiasm makes up for my somewhat hurried preparation. But I really want to get this out, and I want to talk about Falling Leaves Writers Workshop and all the people that got together to help to make it work. Now, the theme of our workshop was really writers helping writers. And I feel that there's a need outside the kind of established world of academic publishing and teaching and the failing world of general publishing and actually writing to write for a living, where an event like mine can be of a useful sort of a format, because in a way we're exchanging information. We have ideas. Now, this event was hosted this weekend at Banbury Place through the graciousness of my landlord, Jack Kaiser, and with his planning and support of Tom Kemp, chair of the UW Eau Claire Economics Department, who is going to help me find grant funding for the next time that I do this, hopefully, which will be in the spring. And the big thing that I wanted to say is I also talked to Paul, who runs the building. He said, well, how did your writers' workshop work out? Did you have good attendance? And I say, well, we got the right people. We got the people I wanted. We got the people, as you say in the band of brothers, we few. But everybody had something to say, and we all learned something about each other. I'm going to do more with Bria Bem and the actual content of her work fairly soon, but I'm going to kind of go over it right now and say that she was wonderful at publicity, organizing, scheduling, keeping us on topic, and making sure that all of us were included in the conversation. And we turned out that three of us, Bria writes Wolves in the Woods, I've written Fenris Unchained, and John Walker, who someday may be a famous writer, and I hope he gets a little nervous when I mention this, write about wolves in different ways. Bria writes about wolves in terms of a post-Holocaust, post-epidemic kind of a world in which humans, especially human males, reduce themselves to a brutal kind of pack behavior with all the pecking order of the alpha wolf and such. John told me a story about a pair bonding event that happened between a kind of a mythical wolf and a lone and alienated individual who was making his father's journey through various parts of his father's past life, his past experience. And this maybe reached to me because I had a separation from my father when I was 19. My father was to live another 26 years, where I only talked to him twice because I separated myself from him when I testified against him in a divorce. And nevertheless, I am my father's son. The people who came, Christine Merrill is a real writer. And by what a real writer, I mean she gets a income, a fairly significant income by writer standards, and that's not hard to do actually. And she writes very interesting. She's a romance writer, and I would defend the quality of her work against any academic critic. I'd rather read her than Jane Austen. I'd rather read her than Charlotte Bronte. And I visited Charlotte Bronte's mansion, her little parish house in Keighley, England. And the interesting thing about Christine is she was a theater costumer before she became a writer. And she was the director of costumes for the Milwaukee Civic Repertory Theater, and all the time she was sort of writing on the side, working and winning contests. And I was listening to something that she said, and she was describing the story. And this will maybe lead in to another part of the rather unusual way that I'm going to do this show. I have a theory. There are several different kind of reviewers, and what I want to do with my reviewing and with this program, when you publishers send me your books, is not worry so much about quality. I'm just not going to waste my time on a bad job, but to find the people who might be interested in what you do. And sometimes it just takes a sentence or two where somebody will perk up, or perhaps you'll get a situation where 2 or 3 people say, well, have you read this? And so you read that. So anyway, Christine has 28 books in print, and just literally finished a book right before she came up here on her own dime with her son, who I knew when he was a little boy, and now he's a handsome 26-year-old man, and her husband, who I talk network theory with. And she was describing something called Miss Winthrop's elopement. And I was off, zoning off, not paying too much attention. And then I heard her say, well, see, the idea with this character is that she's a woman living in the Georgian or Regency England. And that was a very special period in English history, which was sort of a transition from the early modern to the modern period. And so women, a lot of Jane Austen's work is written in the later part of it, when the Napoleon, almost identical with the Napoleonic Wars, where King George is mad as a hatter and someone is ruling in his place, and England is fighting for its life against a Europe that's being terrorized by Napoleon, and it almost appears if nothing can change. And this is going to be what way England will always be. And into this genre, there's developed this sort of romance literature that people seem to be interested in. So the woman in Miss, this will be funny, in Miss Winthrop's elopement. And remember this napkin here, because this napkin has a message from God on it, sort of. But Miss Winthrop's elopement is about a woman whose life goal is to translate the Greco-Roman classics into English so they should be accessible for ordinary people. Now, there are a lot of academic women I know that would love to be doing something like that, and many of the classics are a wonderful thing to read because it describes a world so different from the drudgery, let's say, if you're upper class, of Georgian or Regency England. So this woman wants to do nothing but get her small inheritance, her room with the office, do these translations. She's probably would be a contemporary of I can't remember his name, but his Gibbon was his last name, and he's famous for doing the first historical work in English that was reaching out to a popular audience on the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And even now, 240 years later, we still study Gibbon. All right, I'm going to transition to this message from God here on part 2, and then I'm going to relate some of these comments to a publisher I've been meaning to work with for a while, because they're doing some really good and important things.